Right. Um, Hi. Just a small background of this project. It's called COCO, which is called Cotium Company. Um, Built purely based on a lot of emotions of the client. Uh, just to give you a sense of context of the space, it's in Kottayam. It's probably one of the only, it's bang in the city, bang in the center. It's called the Baker's Junction, one of the most busiest junction. Uh, that's one of the only property right now there which is only a ground floor old house. When I say old house, it was uh, not extremely traditional in terms of vernacular character per se, but it was like a typical house where the parent would keep adding rooms, and eventually sort of filled that entire space, right? And everything around it, where there's high buildings coming up and all commercial. If you go through that street, everything was like that. That's exactly where it is. If you can see the buildings around it is like almost like there's about 6, 7 story there, one on the right, all sort of surrounded in that area. This is literally the entire master plan by the father who kept adding rooms. We are talking about a 150-year-old house which just kept adding and adding and adding. This part, if I can go, this is the only old section of the house that was there, and eventually he added these rooms, and it just blew as a different multiple rooms per se. Sorry, what you see in this street is, can you use this as a pointer as well? No. Okay. So this quadrant is the only quadrant which is available, which I have faded out. The others were all rented out as commercial establishments. As you know, small cafes, there's a momo shop, there's a spectacle shop, blah, 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 everything. Everybody tried their own version of interiors and so on and so forth. Now, of course, a discussion went where whether do we bring down the entire building, build a massive structure. That was a very commercial aspect for the father. It said, it's as good as losing the entire real estate space vertically as well. So it started off by this guy who said, I love food. And he has no background with any sort of, being a chef or any of sort, but everything revolved around food. He always spoke about food. And his background is completely different. They're into printing business. And he said, I want to give a hand with what I've always curated, what I've always loved, the sort of food that I've loved growing up, all the small shops around which I've enjoyed during my entire journey as a young guy who's grown into college, he and his friends, hence Cotium Company came into place. It's sort of his and his friends' collection of food around that space. Now, it was a very conscious effort for me not to give it a shot, to tell him that let's not build something big. Let's just try to see how we can still hold memories of that space, yet open up to what tomorrow is all about. And there's a very famous CMS college over there. The student population is big. So sort of trying to see how we can fit into the scale of what the new age people want to the sort of memories of the house I still wanted to keep. So if you notice, the green patch was the only sort of the land his father didn't take up, right? Everything over here as well. But if you look at this odd space, it's a space which he later added with let's just say an asbestos sheet, and still became a living room eventually in the house. What I did is, I've knocked out a few of the walls, which sort of eased the flow to the space. Pulled down that asbestos sheet over there, because one thing about this house is, because of the sort of commercial establishment around the space, there's absolutely no view. So that sort of worked on to my benefit, because I sort of thought that sense of privacy is also nice when somebody comes in, because you're in this busy street, but you're still coming into an area where you still wanted that sense of privacy. So and also started to see how I can bring a bit of biophilia, which worked really well, because that sort of created this sort of light into this rather dark space. Left everything in terms of the old wall the same. And if you can see, this is where the entrance is coming in here. You have a seating over here. Because of the college that's there, the CMS college, we did a small research, and we found a lot of these restaurants having a lot of students sitting there for hours, and the tables have not been moved. So we've sort of created a sort of community table over there which just goes out to the landscape as well, if you can see there. And that became a focal point for a lot of students to come in. So when students come in, they would be led to that area and they would sit there for hours. This would be a little more of a formal seating, more casual seating, and eventually getting out into the landscape. So what I did is I've casually just slid in a new element in it. What you see as a red is it's a GI sheeted, hot rolled sheet, folded in a form sort of replicating the section of that space, and just inserted it right in. Only so that sort of gives a contrast, but not a dramatic contrast like being white and so on and so forth. And eventually, sort of getting into the space, I'll use the flooring as cement entirely, so that materiality is just, you have the clear old, the new, that's it. And of course, the biophilia, which just kept growing. There is just one yellow oxide was used for one wall because that was a brand color that he had bought in. This is the section, the way that sheets sort of infuse in it. If you see, these were all the new additions of the house that's there. The only rafter that you see is that's the new one. I'm just going to run through. This is what the shed was, this is the entry was. Sort of infused that box through and through. But if you see the photo of the biophilia, which is growing from inside, is sort of even overshooting outside. This turned into this. Just going to rush. The beauty is the new structure also is aging. So there's a new nostalgia is sort of building by itself. This was the area, turned like that. This was that courtyard that I was talking about, which we pulled down this roof and we've created a courtyard by itself. All the old walls remain the same, including the lighting was designed so that it sort of washes the new, the old. Or if you can see, I've continued the same thing all around. None of this was recreated. Just rushing. I've got 6 seconds, and that's the community table with lighting around, blah blah, seating. Oh, there you go. So yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry. Wish I had more time for it, but yeah, it's a completely plan-based discussion. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Fine.
Floor is open for the jury comments.
Yeah, I've been for dinner over there, so I'm quite familiar with it.
For me, I think the clear delineation of old and the new worked quite charmingly. I think there is a sense of cohesiveness also because through and through, whether it's your planning or your execution or your adding of elements, I think this is a story about old and new, and I think you stuck to that story throughout, and I think that worked for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is, continuity of what I was saying in the previous presentation about, authenticity. And I really felt that here it seems to be kind of, this really natural fit where it's not really forced, like a look is not really forced, but it comes out of a very kind of conscious layering of, what was there before and what kind of, is added. So, I mean, it works for me at various levels. It's kind of adaptive reuse. It's kind of this palimpsestic kind of, addition that kind of happens there. It talks about community with that kind of table and, who are these people? How do they like to gather and meet? And this, I can imagine like boisterous, large groups over there. I mean, and then the green and the openness, I mean, so it kind of really works for me. A lovely project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.